Welcome to the Real CP Show. I'm your host, CP, and today's topic: migrants start fire at Mexico border facility against other migrants. Today's topic is migrants start fire at Mexico border facility against other migrants. Now, before I get into that, I want to, it's not exactly similar, but there are parts of it. And I'll tell you what I mean by this relating to this topic. Like part of the description, it talks about the people of color minority. And there is that section of migrants who started the fire that would be considered uh, people of color and are minorities in that section as well. And supremacists sit back and laugh because they know that quite a number of American blacks still have no clue on what is really going on in the direness, especially relating to illegal immigration utilization strategies against American blacks overall. Which then adds to the thing that I will say, and I will stand what I say on this, that the American blacks overall, unfortunately, because of so many types of internal problems, unfortunately, too many more sellouts and the ones that are gullible with very few exceptions, that is not the same strongness of the four mothers and four black mothers and four black fathers of not a long time ago. And this is done on purpose by supremacists, which is the most brilliant mental manipulation force that has ever existed. Because again, they look at American blacks like this. Yes, this is what they do every day. Every day. Now, again, before I get to that particular part about the migrants started fire at the Mexico border facility against other migrants, the thing with the people of color minority based nonsensical demonic switchery tactic, that's not even brilliant. It's almost like pre-kindergarten strategy what they play against overall American blacks to the ones who continue, which is a non-small percentage of American blacks who continue to fix their mouths and keep allowing people, including numbers of American blacks themselves, to keep calling American blacks internally people of color and minority. And again, every time they do that, this is what supremacists do, and some other people too. This is what they do. But they say those Negroes, we can just keep playing any type of game against them and they just believe it. And so the thing about it, again, before I get to the main topic, relating to the thing with the minority thing in the description part, and the minority part specifically, this thing that was going on with the NCAA final college football, college basketball, excuse me, and it was between one team which was predominantly American blacks, and the opposite team, which would be the totally opposite, which would be predominantly personnel, women within the predominant based culture. And it was interesting how a one particular section, a one particular situation where I guess one of the main people on the predominantly based black, American black college basketball team that won was when one of the teammates did this thing with I'm gonna put there some fingers like their hand up and put the like fingers their hand in front of them and they kind of move side to side like you can't really see me, or look at the finger, or like one of the fingers like, hey, we got this championship ring, depending on who you talk to. And you got people that are just blowing this out all kind of proportions and things like that, and then try to make a little bit of racial construct on that, and then try to make it seem like it's unsportsmanlike situation why this particular American black woman put that kind of gesture in front of this woman within the predominant culture who was supposed to be this fifth coming of this great college basketball player that might be end up going to professional basketball. And you have personnel within predominant culture ones and know they are that have a superior code to say, wait a minute now, wait a minute, we must sit there and utilize race on this, then try to make it seem like it's not about race, and we'll point to the American black woman because well, look how she looks. She kind of had this hoodish look to her, and again, not taking anything where they try to take things away from her basketball ability, right? And have people to focus on some insignificant gesture of putting a hand in front of the American black woman's her own face and doing the gesture of side to side with the fingers, the hand as if you can't see me to the other person, predominantly the woman within the predominant coach. You're supposed to be this star player, and you got people that didn't like that. I guess it was after the game. Now I make this point because there was another quick podcast I did relating to uh, 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 the big old papa hoopah about the Final Four is supposed to have all these all women officials. No time ever that they've had all women officials in the Final Four, etc. And I was letting the podcast. So what? Because most people didn't ask which women, since under the supremacist system of racial generic allotative gains, that most people seem to forget that there are numbers of women within the predominant culture that also, but numbers of women within the predominant culture that are, women with numbers of women within the predominant based culture that are considered also minorities. So the thing with the all women in the Final Four officials, well, it makes no difference because most people ask which women. What numbers of American black women do they get sent? Do American black women have some of the same professional college basketball NCAA opportunities as numbers of women within the predominant culture? Is there equality among college basketball, college basketball between coaches and assistant coaches relating to racial equality among what's supposed to be numbers of women, right? Which then numbers of women supposed to be considered minorities? Of course not. So that mattered not. So even with the thing with the situation with the main person that numbers of personnel within certain parts of predominant culture and some sellouts too, that was talking about how that particular American black woman shouldn't have been doing that gesturing of putting a hand in front of her own face and doing a you really can't see me type of gesture after the game. She should have basically had more sportsmanlike. Now you change it. Now remember, these supposed to be what minority? Well, women supposed to be overall considered minorities, right? So what's the big thing? There was just two women, right? That happened to be minorities. That was in a great game, and one of the American black women made a gesture of like, hey, you can't really see me, to the woman within the predominant culture, this main one, right? And it wasn't like if she was in her face directly, right? So it's like kind of a trash talk thing. Hey, look, and we also won this championship. But it didn't make no difference because again, two women that's supposed to be minorities in the brilliancy of supremacist system apparently were equal. Right? Because if it was the opposite and the woman was the main type of woman within the predominant culture who was on the star on the other team, if she would have did that same thing to the American black woman, it'd have been like, hey, just hey man, that's just friendly, this is friendly basketball playing and stuff like that. Boy, these people, these supremacists, brilliant because they know that numbers of American blacks still don't get the concept. There will be no racial equality within the country ever. It's not the way it goes. If that was the case, where's the reparations then? They give money and resources to what we call Native Americans for something that happened to gigantic amount of people that wouldn't even lie back in the Trail of Tears, but they get money. The ones who know what you're talking about. The money, there's money sent to people in different other countries, and who know what corruption type person they'll do with that kind of money. What about other people who get the reparations that you don't even know anything about? So there will be no true racial equality within the country ever. Now, what that do with this particular topic on the migrant start fire at Mexico border facility against other migrants? Because again, how many of the personnel at that Mexico facility or border facility across in Mexico, how many of them will be classified as minorities as well? So it's still another disgusting tactic. How many of them will also be considered people of color? The ones that say that started that fire at that Mexico facility, and say that some of the ones that didn't do that and they made it to the United States, how many numbers are deported, and all the ones that weren't deported, but they was trying to get their way and get this land of milk and honey and freebies and cinnamon and whatever else and stuff like that. How many of them, right, that would have made it to El Norte, United States, be it at the border, saying, "Hey, you know what? Whatever words they got to use and allow them to walk in, amnesty, or we try to escape violence." How many of them would have came right on over? How many? I ain't doing all that. They're just gonna stick across the border and break border immigration laws and laugh. But they still to be considered people of color and minorities. Some of the same ones that started that fire at that Mexico's facility. Let me sit there. Okay. Mm-mm. Now, how many of them would have been considered people of color and minorities? And then a number of American blacks would also bought into calling migrants people of color, the ones I'm talking about. Excuse me, and calling certain type of migrants minorities, and calling again certain type of other migrants people of color. Golly, the gullibility of that is ridiculous. Now again, you know, it's just none amazing how every day you have people across that border, the ones that I'm talking about, that break border immigration laws left and right. And if American blacks more got so tired of the racial racism and terrorists keep going on toward everyday American blacks, and I'm talking about the sellouts, the ones that are gullible, the ones that are naive and think you can just think positive, everything will be fine. And for the last hundreds of years, nothing has been fine for the American blacks overall. And that shows the ignorance when somebody within the culture said that kind of ignorance, with the few exceptions. How many every day that are in those facilities across the Mexico's border that wait at the facility to get processed for whatever amnesty, hopefulness to get to the border to be able to go right on in saying amnesty, amnesty, or we're trying to escape violence, right? We're trying to get a better life, which has nothing to do with anything. That's economics. Well, we're trying to escape violence. From who? And how do they look? The people they're trying to escape violence from? People that look like them. Do you see the nonsensical tactic that is used? But the majority of people who sit there and show racial racism tariffs to American blacks are from however numbers of personnel within certain parts of Padama's culture. With numbers, however that percentage is, also added to ones who want to be like certain personnel within the Padama's culture, but are not because of a different racial category, racial ethnic background, ethnicities of background from an original country, but they want to be like the personnel from certain parts of Padama's culture. And how many of them can't stand American blacks overall either? See, this is what I have to relay over again. No other culture ever and continuously cannot compare to the black pain of the American blacks that continue what they keep going through for generations and get no reparations, but still keep allowing people to put them in a people of color and minority based category nonsense. And again, how many border breakers every day get across that border? Be it waiting their time at some facility across the border from Mexico, getting processing, whatever it might be, and then try to figure out how to get across that border, right? And how many of them say, forget this, or I ain't waiting for nothing. And they sit there and leave the facility, and however many don't even go to the facilities across the border in Mexico and go and find whatever openings or different ways to get across that border to, to El Norte in America to sit back and laugh and get these free benefits and things like that of milk and honey. How many of those numbers of migrant women, whatever that's supposed to mean? How generic that is, migrant. So a personnel that sneaks across the border is a migrant. How does it make any sense? They're not undocumented. They're illegal. If American blacks turned around and said, "We're tired of this racialism tariffs. We're going to go to the border and we're going to go across the border to Mexico and other places, and because economically, they can afford more of that kind of stuff like that," and and say numbers American blacks say, forget this. I don't need no documents or anything like that. I'm just gonna go across that border. Whatever their officials at the border, I'm just gonna tell them, hey, they want to go across that border because they're trying to escape black American blacks trying to escape political violence and physical violence, and they just want to have more of a peaceful time. Man, those officials across that border, Mexico be like, so what? What a game. Let me sit there and show you something as well again, okay? I'm going to show you something. This is getting into this particular topic as well. On it, give me 1 second here. Let me show you something.
Group of migrants breaching the country this weekend was incredible. Take a look. More than 1,000 migrants from Venezuela rushing to the United States port of entry in El Paso, Texas yesterday. These migrants, as I mentioned, mostly from Venezuela, were seen pushing against the fenced borders, pushing into America. Both U.S. Border Protection and the Mexican military worked to contain the situation on both sides of the border yesterday. Joining me right now is former Acting Director of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He's the Heritage Foundation Visiting Fellow and Fox News contributor, Tom Homan. Tom, thanks very much for being here. Incredible picture. It shows you this is not slowing down at all. How do you read this Venezuelan movement here into America?
Well, we got to remember the Venezuelans, they're part of that four-country agreement. They're going to bring 30,000 a month through parole. But look, these people are going to wait in line. The administration's actions speak louder than their words. Since Joe Biden's been in office, there's been over 6 million encounters on the border, and the vast majority of them have been released. So they're going to push to get into the country legally. They don't need parole because the end game is the same. When all these people come in parole, the immigration court data is clear that 9 out of 10 will lose their case in court if they show up and be ordered removed. If you enter illegally and you get arrested, you're not going to be removed either because the Secretary of Homeland Security is on record. Being in the country illegally on its own It's not enough for ICE to seek and arrest you. So they're
What else kind of words can be not explained, or words that cannot be explained? How crazy that sounds! You saw the personnel pushing through. But numbers of American blacks will be considered them people of color minorities. And that wasn't just numbers of Venezuelans. How many other different cultures and also that were inside there also? And you see what the guy said: millions of them, millions within this administration have been basically pseudo coming across them. And how many of them escape? How many of them, majority, would never sit there and show up at the for their cases and things like that? That's reality. And you have some personnel that try to play little white lie switchery where their numbers stop, just stop. And just like this category with the situation with these migrants that started the fire across the border at a Mexico facility against other migrants, they don't care about other migrants. They care about themselves. So, how many of those migrants were part of however different cultures that were also are breaking border immigration laws every day? How many of those uh, violent numbers of migrants that started that fire? How many of them didn't care about other migrants that fire fatalized other migrants that look like them overall, right? Let me sit there and show you. Let's go to the next video on that. Let's go to the next video. Mm, mm, mm.
At least 40 migrants are dead after a fire at a detention center in Mexico near the U.S. border.
Our authorities now believe a group of migrants fearing deportation started that fire. Chris Welch joins us now with the scope of the investigation. Chris.
Yeah, Steve and Natasha, officials are calling this one of the deadliest events to ever take place at a Mexican immigration lockup facility. Now, this happened in Juarez, Mexico, right across the border from El Paso, Texas, a major crossing point for migrants. Now, take a look at this video. This was the scene shortly afterward. You can see fire crews, ambulances, and vehicles from the morgue all responding there. At the time of the blaze, 68 men from Central and South America were all being held here. In addition to the 40 who were killed, 29 were described as being in, quote, delicate, serious condition. That's according to the National Immigration Institute. Mexico's president, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, at a press conference today explaining why officials think migrants intentionally lit this blaze.
We suppose they found out they were going to be deported, mobilized, and as a protest, at the door of the center, they put mattresses at the center and set them afire. And they did not imagine that this was going to cause this terrible misfortune.
28 of the 40 migrants who died were from Guatemala. That's according to Guatemala's Foreign Affairs Minister. Immigration officials say that the other dead and injured are migrants from Honduras, El Salvador, Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador. Now, Mexico's immigration facilities have been struggling with overcrowding in recent months, ever since U.S. officials began urging Mexico to stem the flow of migrants coming into the U.S. An estimated
Mm. That was just ridiculous. That wasn't, and that was male. That wasn't females. No, no, no. They let the females get out of there. If any females, well, whatever females at the facility, oh, they got them out of there, which is a different topic. So and you think about it, and you hear what the guy said that you had numbers that came from Guatemala, Nicaragua, Salvador, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's like one of the previous videos I showed you where he was saying about Venezuela. Well, it ain't wasn't just Venezuelans that was in that mix pushing through and stuff like that. There was different ones. And the thing about it, again, in this particular topic, you heard that any dozens of males from different cultures, numbers of Central and South America and whatever else, were burned alive by other migrants that was like, hey, you know what? Because there are certain migrants that in that facility that might have been deported from the U.S. And then processed back there, and Harvard numbers of other migrants that was there and was in that facility and trying to figure out the processing. Hey, how can they get out of that facility? If there's more of a detention part of it, or the detention slash shelter area. So it really just depends. But the point is that uh, with the number of personnel that died in that fire, about migrants against other migrants, those migrants that put ablaze those mattresses and killed off other migrants. Again, how many of them were migrants from some of the same places that the same numbers of migrants started the fire? So again, that shows reality that numbers of migrants don't care about other migrants. They care about them individual themselves. Now, as collectively, they may say, "Hey, man, we're from this particular culture and things like that." But when it comes down to sitting there trying to get to El Norte and get that the land of sweet honey and sweet milk, and getting freebies left and right, and for some numbers of women, unless they have certain health situations, to have one baby, two babies, three babies, four babies, wherever it is, and getting free medical and free dental, and however numbers of personnel have gotten free housing, utilizing a child that was produced out and stuff like that, that have automatic citizenship, and they would get some kind of housing for free if that's still going on and stuff like that. How many of them get free food stamps and things like that? Freebies over and over again. It's ridiculous, disgusting. And it's sad that there's just not enough American blacks that don't understand this disgusting tactic that is also being used collectively and will be used against more American blacks overall. And this is again why one of the main things that's going to destroy the American black culture overall, or added, we're about the American black culture overall only has half a generation to one generation left. Because again, think about this migrant. It's like the system, and especially they utilize main media and other different people and pro legal organizations and certain types of legal resources. And you got people like love saying are saying undocumented. How you gonna be undocumented and you sneak across the border illegally? How you gonna be undocumented? And even when somebody says, well, but they going through this amnesty protocol. Well, there's a certain time and certain understanding of certain amnesty. At the same time, when somebody just popping up to the border, bypassing other people in other different countries who are putting in the proper application, putting in the correct fees, putting in the documents, and they waiting years and years and years to have an opportunity to come to the states on a visa or whatever other program. You got other different people who know they are sitting across that border, right, or going to whatever facilities across that border, saying whatever they need to say to sit there and go fast track past other people who are trying to put in the proper paperwork and put in the right fees and the documents in the proper way. Think about how that sounds. So they can play that game with somebody else utilizing a migrant in a genericality based fashion. How about the migrants that come across, they're able to come across the border, process across the border, right? That won't ever go back. Say these, some situation happen where they got to put other paperwork in, or show up to whatever scenario, and ones that don't show up. What about them? Again, and at the same time, who's going to take care of millions of what you say migrants? Who's going to take care of them? That's part of reparations as well. But American blacks can't get no reparations themselves. Golly. And last thing I'm going to show is this right here.
Incident just illustrates the broader frustrations among migrants here who are effectively in limbo, not knowing whether they will be able to enter the U.S.
And this isn't the first time we've seen this type of thing, Camillo. Any sense of changes that may happen as far as how Mexico detains people?
Well, that's right, Errol. This is unfortunately increasingly common. The United Nations actually calls the US Mexico border the deadliest land crossing in the world. Thousands of migrants have died over the past few years trying to reach the US. In fiscal year 2022 alone, 853 migrants died on American soil trying to cross the US Mexico border. That is a record and is likely an undercount.
You see this nonsensical pouting. Well, they said the American border, American Mexico border is some of the most deadliest. Piss off with that silly tactic that people keep trying to play, and unfortunately, it's being bought by those American blacks. Oh, it's been several hundred people, migrants, that have lost their lives. That's a choice. What about the American blacks every day that don't have choice? The millions of American blacks that don't have choices, but to continue having black pain put upon them. What about the American blacks? More and more that's going in poverty. What about the American blacks who are sitting there saying, "What about reparations for generational black pain?" Well, we don't have the money for that right now. Well, but they keep people. The Supremes keep finding money to send over to different countries, helping them out with wars and conflicts and things like that. They got a way to keep finding ways to sit there and help out with migrant facilities, helping out with the children. Remember, every so often they'll bring up. See, they haven't done it lately, right? Because it's a game. Oh, what about the migrant kids? A few years back, and it happens throughout. I think this a few years ago. This stuff happens continuously. They only bring it up when they want to bring it up. What happened to the migrant kids they did a couple of years ago? Oh, they locking them up in detention facilities. What happened to them? You see this disgusting game they keep playing? What about the American black kids every day that's suffering themselves because of black pain? What about the everyday American black kids that are in poverty, trying to figure out what they're going to eat the next day? What about the American black kids? Say, for instance, okay, they had opportunity, parent or parents or whoever it is, or grandparents or whoever it is, and say they had a decent life, but for some reason they get reminded. None of the youth, black kids, are getting reminded over and over again, and not understanding why this stuff keeps happening. What about them? And you hear in the last video I showed you, oh, again, several hundred migrants lost their lives. What about the multi millions in combination of uh, uh, border breakers, and are the ones that have gotten detained at the border, right? What's called prosecutorial discretion, and how many are still allowed to stay within the states? How many of them are say, oh no, well, prosecutorial discretion, oh, you had to go across the border, and they go come back right back again? What about them? See, this migrant genericality is such an insult. It's like a boogeyman. Migrant here, migrant there, migrant there, migrant there, migrant there, migrant there. Undocumented, undocumented. How you gonna be a migrant again if you're breaking a one that break immigration laws? Well, what about the ones that are, well, they said they're claiming amnesty. Oh, okay. So how many of them that you truly will never know that come up with the same story? I'm trying to escape political violence. I'm trying to escape physical violence. Again, from who? These migrants. Oh, these migrants saying the same old tired out game that's still continuously succeeding. But they're migrants. But American blacks that suffer more than migrants will ever understand. And what about the migrants again? That many numbers of American blacks that don't even know the ones that are migrants, that they go to the store or go to a restaurant or out and about wherever it is, and you don't even know that they might be what you call migrants. How many of them can't stand your black guts, American black guts themselves, but use them to get some kind of way to fast track themselves to get some kind of green card? What about them? Don't care nothing about American black pain. Do you see migrants jumping up and down about helping other American black folks out? Of course not. But how many American blacks keep calling numbers of migrants people of color and minority too? What a terrible game that numbers of American blacks don't understand what's going on right now. And this is why I'm going to say again, the American blacks only have half a generation to one generation left. It is ridiculous that there is quite a number of American blacks, with few exceptions, that don't understand how silly it sounds to allow people to put American blacks overall in the people of color and minority based category, and numbers of American blacks that sit there and fix their mouths, the one I'm talking about, that have the silliness to sit there and call themselves people of color and minority when you call migrants and our other undocumented border break illegal immigration personnel, that how many of them will be considered minorities and people of color, and how many of them will be considered migrants. And again, can't stand the guts of American blacks overall. So again, American blacks overall have half a generation to one generation left before the overall complete destruction for the American black culture. I thank you for tuning in to the Real CP Show.